Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Heavy Metal Music Theory. If anybody has any requests for hard rock and heavy metal songs they'd like me to analyze, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I'm having a blast doing these, and the audience support seems to be there, so let's keep it going. Today we're looking at a Pink Floyd tune called Breathe, which is off Dark Side of the Moon. It's a very chill song. I'm going to be discussing the verse and the chorus. The verse is just a 2-chord progression. We're going E minor 7 or E minor. All right, there you have it. So the 2-chord progression is E minor and A7. Now, anytime you have a dominant chord, meaning a 7, you pretty much guaranteed that that's a 5 chord in a specific key, and therefore it makes it easy to figure out the key. The key that has the A7 as the 5th note is the key of D. And of course, it could be the key of D major or the key of D harmonic minor. We're going to go with the key of D major here, simply because the E minor is a minor chord, not a diminished chord. If we were in the key of D minor, that E would be a diminished, but in the key of D major, the 2 chord is always minor. So we're dealing with a 2 chord to a 5 chord. All right? Now, there's no D as a 1 chord in this progression, at least for the verse. Okay, so we're actually going to consider this a modal section, and I have yet to talk about modes on my channel. It is one of the more advanced concepts in music theory, but we're just going to give you what it is today, just for the heck of it. So a mode is essentially where you take your major scale and you start on a different letter other than the first letter. And then each note denotes a certain type of mode. We're essentially doing the D major scale, but we're not playing a D chord. We're going from the 2 chord, E minor, to the 5 chord, A7. And it's that progression back and forth that would be known as the Dorian mode, because anything built off the 2nd degree of a major scale, in this case the E minor chord, would be considered a Dorian progression. So the verse is in E, Dorian. E because the chord is E, and Dorian because the E chord is the 2nd chord of the major scale. I hope that made sense to you guys. The chorus part, this is where stuff gets really interesting. We're going to be pulling, just to give you a little heads up, we're going to be pulling chords from D major and D minor for this section. And those 2 keys both start with D. One's major, one's minor. Those are considered parallel keys because they both start with D, but they have different qualities. One's major, one's minor. All right, so the first chord in the chorus is a C major 7. All right, that makes the most sense as the 4 chord. I'm sorry, brain fart. Cut that out. All right, let's do that again. C major 7 is the 7 chord in the key of D minor. So I'm putting up both D minor and D major on the screen here for you guys to see, and then I'm going to insert arrows where the chords fall in the progression, so you see what chords are coming from what parallel key. All right, so C major 7 is the 7 chord of D minor. The next chord in the progression is a B minor. All right, B minor 7. That is coming from D major. It is the 6th chord, because the 6th chord in a major key is always minor, and it's not a diminished chord, and it's not a flat. It's just a straight old B minor chord. So that is the 6th chord in D major. Okay, so now we've toggled between D minor to D major. The next chord is an F major 7, which is honestly one of my favorite chords on guitar. Alright, that is the 3 chord in the key of D minor. That is the 3. The 3 is always a major chord in the minor key. The next chord is a G major. All right, now we're going to toggle back to the D major key, and this is a 4 chord. So the G major is the 4 chord in D major. The last chord, and this is where stuff gets spicy, okay? The last chord is a D7. Now, as I said at the beginning of this lesson, anytime you hear a 7 chord, you have to automatically think 5 chord, right? But we're dealing with the key of D major and D minor as parallels. There's no D7 in a D key, right? It's impossible. The 5 can't be the same as the 1, right? So how do we justify that dominant chord in this song? Well, D7 is the 5 of G major. Okay? So let's let that sink in. They're throwing in the 5 chord from G major. Now, so far, we haven't been in the key of G major at all. So why now are we resolving to a G major? Well, in reality, the D7 doesn't resolve to a G major in the song. It actually resolves to an E minor. So how do we make sense of this, guys? What is the connection between G major and E minor? They are relative, which means the notes of the G major scale are reused from E as the new starting point, the new 1 chord, and that gives you the E minor scale. But more importantly, it's going to resolve the progression back to the E minor chord that we played at the beginning, which is acting as the 2 chord in D major. And then we're restarting that 2 chord Dorian, E Dorian progression right back over again, where we're doing the E minor to the A7. Alright, so we've kind of come full circle. And I gave you the information regarding the G major, E minor relative connection, because that would be, even though it's technically not resolving to either key, that is a knowledgeable stepping stone for trying to figure stuff like this out. So the D7 is resolving to the E minor. Technically, E minor is not the 1, it's the 2 of the E Dorian progression that we did at the beginning. But it works because the E minor is also the 1 of the relative major G, which is what D7 would resolve to. So everything is related. It's like the 6 degrees of separation of all human beings, right? Everything is related to everything else somehow. And the same goes for music. So I hope that made sense. I had a blast taking a look at this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Again, if you have any requests, drop them. Likes, subscribes, and have a great day.